couple of months ago, I had this very fun and a little crazy idea to build a PESO model diagnostic. I had been wanting to try vibe coding, mostly to see what everyone was talking about. So I figured I would test it out with something that we could introduce to the industry if I was successful. Let me tell you what, it was so fun. And I learned a lot in the process as well. Vibe coding the diagnostic was the easy part. I then had to connect it to our marketing automation software. I had to make sure that you got the results on the page if you wanted them. If you wanted them emailed to you, I had to figure all of that out. I had to build a landing page that I could drop it into. And I was working on that last part of it a few weekends ago, and I completely broke the website. Yeah, completely took it down, the whole thing. Yeah, so maybe some things are better left to the experts. I had to panic call our web firm on a Saturday morning and have them restore a backup from the night before. I'm amazing. But I got it done and I launched that bad boy. And now we have some great data on where senior leaders, mid-market marketers, agency principals, and in-house teams across B2B financial services, nonprofits, consumer brands, and agencies stand in their PESO model journey. 91% are stuck in the bottom half of the PESO model maturity ladder. Yet, almost half of them describe themselves as integrated, and exactly 0 have made it to the top. My friends, the math, it's not mathing. You cannot be integrated and sit at the bottom of the maturity ladder. And yet, that gap between what teams claim and where they actually operate is the single most important piece of data I've seen emerge from our work this year. This is part 3 of the PESO Model Operating System series. Part 1 argued that PESO has graduated from a framework to an operating system. Part 2 named the AI era discipline problem that quietly undoes most teams' best work. So on this week's SpinSucks podcast episode, I'll walk you through the 6 stages of PESO maturity, what each one looks like in practice with examples you recognize, the threshold almost nobody crosses and why, and how to find out where your team sits. Truly sits, not optimistically sits.
If you're a communications pro who works hard, doesn't compromise quality, and gets the job done, welcome home. We'll share our tips, tricks, and stories, and together we will change the face of PR. Spin sucks, but we don't. With the Spin Sucks podcast, here's Gini Dietrich.
Welcome back to the Spin Sucks podcast. I'm Gini Dietrich. Before we get started, I have a little tidbit for you. Did you know that if you can't finish watching right now, you can subscribe to the audio version of the show? We're on all the platforms where you get your podcasts, including Spotify and Apple, or you can subscribe to our newsletter at spinsucks.com and get it in your inbox every Tuesday morning. Most teams we talk to tell us some version of the same thing. We do PESO, we're integrated, we run our channels together. The conviction is real. The self-perception is consistent. And the data reportedly does not back that up. Here is what the data from the PESO diagnostic tells us versus what the actual scoring produced. 68% said they run PESO as a system, and yet all of them scored at the bottom 2 stages of the ladder. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's totally normal. We discovered that, right, when we looked at the Budweiser Super Bowl ad, that not even they are at the top rung of the maturity ladder. They were super coordinated. Lots of things work together. They were not integrated. So to score in the top half of the model or of the ladder, you have to be integrated, right? The data from the diagnostic has also revealed that 47%, so nearly half, said they were integrated across paid, earned, shared, and owned, but they actually are at the pilot or foundation level, which is at the bottom. 31% said they were fully integrated at the top of the self-rating scale. Of those, only 2 actually scored above the scale level, which is at about midway. The rest landed at foundation or pilot. None of this is an indictment. The teams in the data are smart, well-intentioned, and doing really good, really measurable work. The point is that integration sounds like something you either do or don't do, when in reality, it has stages. Knowing which stage you're at is the first move. Almost every team I know is one stage behind, at least one stage behind where they think they are. And that includes most of the well-resourced brands in the world. So let's take a look at the ladder. There are 6 stages of PESO maturity. They're not aspirational hierarchy. You don't have to climb to the top of the ladder for your work to matter. In fact, most organizations never will, and that's okay. They're an honest description of what happens inside the operating system. So let me say 2 things before we walk through the stages. First, as I said, this is not aspirational hierarchy. You don't go from rung to rung to rung to rung to rung all the way up. You don't have to climb to the top of the ladder for your work to matter. Different brands belong at different stages depending on life cycle, funding, business model, and category. A growth stage startup running PESO at pilot can outperform a Fortune 500 stuck at foundation. The crime is not being at foundation or at the lower rung of the ladder. The crime is being at foundation while telling yourself you're at scale. Second thing I want to tell you, each stage has tells, looks different from the outside, and demands a different next move. The point of the ladder is not where you are, it's knowing where you are and choosing the right next move. Okay, so with that, let's look at the stages. The first stage is stage 0, foundation. At the foundation level, channels exist. Integration does not. The team is execution-led, channel organized, and cannot tell you which story is traveling across paid, earned, shared, and owned this quarter because each function runs its own calendar, or some channels aren't running at all. You might be here at the foundation level if PESO is unfamiliar or inconsistently understood inside your team. You might be here if planning happens channel by channel. You might be here if it truly runs as tactics from each media type, or if you can't name a single integrated campaign that you ran in the last 6 months. Oracle has the proof that most B2B brands would kill for a major share of the enterprise AI infrastructure, the cloud AI, the OpenAI cloud deal, and Cerner's healthcare data. But paid runs on its own, earned reacts to everything Larry Ellison says, and he's not saying some nice things right now. Owned builds documentation, and shared lives in event cycles. Each channel is alive and working, but none of them support or amplify the other. That's what foundation looks like at scale. Real proof, real budgets, 0 integration. 4 media types, 4 sets of KPIs, 4 teams that do not work together at all. Integration would mean a single thesis about Oracle as the enterprise. It would look at their AI infrastructure layer and it would have every proof point reinforcing that across all 4 channels and structured for AI answer engines. If they did this, the work would not change, but the visibility would explode and they would move on up very fast up the maturity ladder. All right, so that's foundation. And that is stage 0. Stage 1 is pilot. At the pilot level, one integrated campaign is running and the rest of the function is not. The team has weekly cross-functional meetings. They run one initiative end-to-end across paid, earned, shared, and owned. And they've probably produced a real proof of concept, but the discipline hasn't generalized to anything else on the calendar. So you might be at the pilot stage if you can name a single campaign that ran with coordinated planning across all 4 media types. You might be at the pilot stage if the rest of your calendar is still channel organized and your cross-functional standing meeting is new enough that you literally just implemented it that people still remember adding it to their calendar. Okay. McDonald's runs world-class integrated PESO when it decides to run a moment. The Travis Scott meal, the Grimace shake, the Wicked tie-in. There are all case studies that everyone studies and cites. Paid amplified, earned wrote, owned the menu, the app, the merch, delivered, and shared carried it everywhere. Every channel is in conversation for about 6 weeks. Then look at the rest of the year. They have the value menu, breakfast pushes, regional franchise marketing run by separate teams, separate calendars, separate agencies, and separate KPIs. That's pilot at scale. Integration is the special event mode, not the operating mode that they're using internally all of the time. Integration would mean treating every week like a Grimace week, but maybe without the purple burgers. It's kind of gross. Same coordination, same discipline, same cross-channel rhythm. If they did this every week, would build on the last, and McDonald's wouldn't need to rent cultural relevance every time they launch something new. So that's pilot. Stage 2 is scale. At the scale level, integration is a behavior. It's not an event. The team runs multiple integrated campaigns every year with shared KPIs across marketing and comms, scheduled cross-functional planning, and a working playbook for how paid, earned, and shared move together. Integration shows up on the calendar, but it isn't yet operationalized as a system. So you might be at the scale stage if you can name at least 2 integrated campaigns from the past year, you have shared KPIs across marketing and communications, your cross-functional planning is a permanent calendar fixture, but you still don't have a dedicated PESO integrator or a dashboard tying the 4 media types together. Dove has run integrated PESO campaigns on the same thesis, Real Beauty, for 2 decades. They had the Real Beauty sketches in 2013, they had Show Us in 2019, they had the Reverse Selfie in 2021, and they had the Code in 2024. They're due for a new one. In these cases, paid amplifies, earned rights, owned hosts the conversation, shared carries it culturally. Every channel is integrated around the same thesis every couple of years. Then look at the months between launches. They have standard CPG marketing, product pushes, performance media, retailer co-marketing, each running on separate teams and separate calendars. That's scale. The campaigns are integrated, but the function is not there yet. So they're running integrated campaigns. Their marketing and communications function is not operationalized yet from an integrated perspective. Integration would mean running Real Beauty as an always-on operating system, not a campaign that reactivates every couple of years. It would have shared measurement and a dedicated PESO integrator that turns it into a true system. If they did this, Dove wouldn't have to keep relaunching Real Beauty. The thesis would compound all on its own, and the brand wouldn't have to re-earn it every time they did something new. So that is scale and a good example of that. Okay, so stage 3 is Systemize. At the Systemize level, integration stops being a campaign discipline and becomes a function. The team has a dedicated PESO integrator. They have shared dashboards tracking performance across all 4 media types. They have cross-channel attribution that influences budget conversations, and they have integrated planning on a quarterly cycle. PESO is no longer a behavior. It is the operating system that they use to run their marketing and comms. You might be here if one person owns integration, is making sure that paid, earned, shared, and owned are all working together as their actual job. That is their job. You might be here if cross-channel attribution influences resource allocation. And you might be here if your team can pull up a single dashboard that shows what's working across all 4 media types in one single view. Sephora runs one of the most integrated retail operations in the world. The spine is Beauty Insider, the loyalty data layer connecting digital, in-store, and creator partnerships, which has rewarded me handsomely for many years. I love my Beauty Insider. Owned generates the first-party data. Earned reinforces credibility. Shared runs on creator and community signals. Paid targets off the loyalty layer. Every channel feeds the same dashboard every quarter. Then look what happens between those quarterly reviews. A TikTok trend crests and fades before merchandising can respond. A creator moment burns out before paid catches up. That's Systemize. The system runs beautifully on planned things, but it isn't nimble or flexible enough to pivot or react to real-time situations. Real-time integration, which is the next phase, would mean treating those dashboards as live instruments rather than quarterly review decks. The Beauty Insider data layer is already in place. What's missing is cadence. So in-flight decisions that turn a system into a competitive engine. If they did this, the system wouldn't just be smart, it would be fast. And in beauty retail, speed compounds the system's already strong advantage. Stage 4 is real time. At the real-time level, which is where I would love to see Sephora go, the system pivots. Decisions across paid, earned, shared, and owned get made in days, sometimes hours, based on integrated performance data. The dashboards aren't review decks, they're live instruments. Integrated insights start influencing decisions beyond marketing. They influence product, they influence pricing, they influence hiring, they influence content. You might be here if you reallocate budget across all 4 media types in flight. Your weekly optimization meeting changes something across all 4 channels every week, and integrated performance data shows up in non-marketing conversations such as product, content, and hiring. Netflix runs the most publicly visible real-time PESO operation in the entertainment industry. When a show breaks, Squid Game, Wednesday, Adolescence, super disturbing movie, the whole brand pivots within days. Paid reallocates within the week, earned gets fed talent for the talk show circuit, shared activates creators overnight, owned the homepage, Tudum, Tudum, the app's algorithm, reorganizes around the hit. So they're reallocating things as it goes, as it moves, right? Every channel feeds the same dashboard every day. Then look at what the other companies copy. They copy Netflix's content bets and its algorithm. They don't copy the PESO operation behind them because they don't even know where to look or how to look for it. That is real time. The system runs and adapts, but it isn't yet the most recognized moat. Leadership, which is the last stage, would mean treating the operating system itself as the brand's competitive advantage, publishing how it works, documenting its effectiveness, letting it become the named reason other companies study Netflix beyond their real-time activation. If they did this, Netflix wouldn't just dominate streaming. The operating system itself would become the case study, and competitors couldn't copy it piecemeal. And as Charlie Sheen famously said one time, winning would become their tagline. And then we have stage 5, which is leadership. And at the leadership level, the operating system itself is the brand's competitive moat. PESO mastery is not a marketing capability anymore. It shapes product, it shapes hiring, it shapes partnerships, it shapes enterprise strategy. The function is studied externally. The way you integrate becomes the named reason you win, not just the work you ship. You might be here if your integrated PESO operation is publicly documented as your competitive advantage. And as somebody who owns the copyright on PESO and scours the web for anything on PESO, I can tell you right now that there is not a single brand that is there. There is one that is close, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but there is not a single brand that documents PESO publicly as their competitive advantage. They're not having other companies cite their operating model as the one that they're trying to copy. And they're not having PESO insights show up in board materials, hiring conversations, and product decisions, not just marketing reviews. So that, from a leadership perspective, that's where you would want to be. That said, Liquid Death turned canned water into a billion-dollar brand by making the integrated PESO operation itself the product. The water is incidental. The marketing operation is the company. Owned is brand as content. Earned is constant, and most of it is about the marketing itself. Shared runs on creator collabs. So they had Tony Hawk's Blood skateboards. They had the Martha Stewart pact, every Steve-O moment. Paid exists from their perspective to provoke earned. Every channel feeds the others. Everyone else is watching. The only other brand that's come close to this is Red Bull. Look at what other companies copy. They don't copy the water. They study the marketing operation, the brand voice, the discipline. The integrated operation is what is externally recognized. That is leadership. The system is the moat. There isn't a next stage. At leadership, the work changes from climbing to defending. The challenge isn't getting better at integration, it's resisting the gravity that pulls every iconic system back to institutional real time. If they keep doing this, Liquid Death will outlast brands 10 times its size because the operating system, not the product, is the durable advantage. When you look at all of this together, the PESO model maturity ladder includes this. Foundation. Every channel is alive, but none supports or amplifies the other. For the most part, most companies are here. Pilot. Every channel is in conversation for about 6 weeks. Scale. Every channel is integrated around the same thesis every couple of years. Systemize. Every channel feeds the same dashboard every quarter. Real time. Every channel feeds the same dashboard every day. Leadership. Every channel feeds the others everyone else is watching. It's completely acceptable to spend years at scale or systemize if that's the right stage for your business. Almost no brand ever reaches real time or leadership, and that's not the point. The crime is not where you are on the ladder. It's not knowing where you are or running PESO as 4 disconnected channels while telling yourself you're integrated. The pattern in our data is unambiguous. Almost everyone's self-rating is at least 1 stage higher than their actual score. Resist the urge to round up. You want to have real-time data so that you understand where you really are. So when you take the diagnostic, don't be overly confident about things. Be honest. And it's okay if you scale, if you're down at the bottom. It's okay, because now you have so much room for growth and you have places that you can move, right? So there are 2 ways to find the truth. The first is a really hard conversation inside your team about what stage you're really at using the "you might be here if" cues from each rung. Be ruthless. It's better to discover you're at pilot when you thought you were at scale than to keep optimizing for the wrong stage. The second, of course, is faster. Take the PESO model diagnostic. It scores you across owned, earned, shared, and paid, measurement, and integration. It surfaces the gap between your self-rating and your actual performance, and it tells you exactly where you sit. Then it tells you your next move. And this is the part that actually matters. And it's free. You can take it as often as you like. You can figure out how or if things have changed. You can figure out where you sit 6 months from now. It's always free. Choose the smallest possible next move. We give you 3 action items to choose from. You can start with 1. Maybe it's 1 weekly cross-channel stand-up. Maybe it's 1 shared KPI. Maybe it's 1 dashboard, 1 person who owns integration. Climbing this ladder is a sequence of teeny tiny small structural moves, not 1 single heroic act. And that, my friends, is the PESO model maturity ladder. Whew. If you want to chat about using PESO as your operating system, join us in the Spin Sucks community. It's a great place to get advice, brainstorm ideas, and build real relationships with your peers. You can find us at spinsucks.com/community. That's spinsucks.com/community. And make sure you follow us on LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram. We're posting tips, how-tos, cheat sheets, shit Ginny says, best practices, and more every week. I'll see you next week. Bye.